Every single day, billions of dollars worth of goods and services flow across the US-Canada border, supporting countless jobs, businesses, and entire industries on both sides. From auto parts and fresh produce to high-tech equipment and energy resources, this cross-border trade is the lifeblood of North American economies, connecting communities and fueling prosperity from coast to coast. For decades, this seamless movement of people and products has been a cornerstone of North American prosperity, allowing supply chains to operate efficiently and families to stay connected, until now, when a sudden policy shift threatens to disrupt this delicate balance. In a move that caught many by surprise, Canada has abruptly decided to impose significant new tolls on its busiest land border crossings. These new fees, introduced with little warning, have sent shockwaves through supply chains, business communities, and political circles on both sides of the border. Ottawa insists that the new border infrastructure and security levy is essential to fund critical maintenance and enhance border security. However, the announcement has sparked outrage in the United States, with many officials and business leaders calling it a unilateral move that threatens years of cooperation. The result: the most serious bilateral dispute between the two countries in recent memory. This video unpacks the motivations behind Canada's bold new policy, the fierce American backlash, especially from former President Trump, who has made the issue a rallying cry, and the real-world impacts on trade, local economies, and border communities that depend on open access. The stakes could not be higher. At risk is the future of the USMCA trade agreement, the stability of vital supply chains, and the very nature of the US-Canada partnership that has underpinned decades of growth and cooperation. Even a brief disruption could have ripple effects across North America. As tensions escalate and both sides dig in, the question remains: is this just a temporary spat, or could it mark the beginning of a deeper, more lasting rift between two old friends and allies? Join us as we dive into the unfolding crisis at the world's longest international border, exploring what's at stake for both nations, and for the future of North American trade. Canada frames the new tolls as a practical fix for crumbling infrastructure, especially highways battered by decades of heavy truck traffic. Ottawa argues that maintaining and upgrading these vital trade corridors is too costly for Canadian taxpayers alone. The border infrastructure and security levy is a user fee. Those who benefit most, mainly US companies, should help pay for upkeep. Politically, the move signals Canadian sovereignty and a pushback against economic dependence on the US, appealing to voters wary of American influence. The tolls also serve as leverage, reminding Washington that smooth trade requires Canadian cooperation. With US politics distracted by upcoming elections, Trudeau's government seized the moment, betting that the long-term benefits would outweigh short-term fallout. Whether this gamble pays off remains to be seen. The new tolls hit hardest at a handful of critical border crossings. The Windsor-Detroit corridor, North America's busiest, is the lifeline of the auto industry, now facing costly delays and disruptions. The Niagara frontier, linking southern Ontario and western New York, is vital for goods heading to major markets. Tolls here squeeze thousands of daily truck trips. On the west coast, the Pacific Highway crossing is key for agriculture and tech, and new fees threaten to raise prices from Vancouver to Seattle. The Champlain-Lacolle crossing, main artery between Montreal and the US Northeast, now faces new costs that ripple through supply chains. By targeting these high-volume routes, Canada maximizes revenue, but also guarantees maximum disruption. What were once symbols of cooperation are now flashpoints of economic conflict. The pressure is on for both sides. The border infrastructure and security levy is a tiered system. Commercial trucks pay up to $150 per crossing, with higher fees for heavier loads. Passenger vehicles are charged around $15, a major hit for daily commuters. Frequent traveler programs offer small discounts, but regular crossers still face hundreds in new monthly costs. Electronic tolling systems were rushed into place, causing confusion and technical glitches for drivers and companies. Critics call the policy a hidden tax that will drive up consumer prices and potentially violate the spirit of the USMCA. Canada expects to raise over $3 billion annually, earmarked for infrastructure and border security. But skepticism remains. Will these funds truly modernize the border, or just deepen the divide? Former President Trump wasted no time blasting Canada's new border tolls on Truth Social, taking to his favorite platform to voice his outrage in a series of rapid-fire posts. Within minutes, his message was spreading like wildfire across social media, igniting heated debates on both sides of the border. Trump called the tolls an unfair attack on hard-working American truckers and businesses, claiming that Canadian policies were putting American jobs and livelihoods at risk. He painted a picture of U.S. truckers being unfairly singled out and burdened by what he described as a punitive measure. In a scathing post, he accused Prime Minister Trudeau of betrayal, saying the Canadian leader had turned his back on years of cross-border cooperation. Trump demanded that the U.S. immediately impose a 100% reciprocal toll on all Canadian vehicles entering the United States, framing it as a matter of national pride and economic justice. Not stopping there, Trump threatened to tear up the USMCA trade agreement and slap sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods if the tolls weren't scrapped, warning of a looming trade war that could disrupt billions in commerce. His fiery rhetoric quickly transformed what began as a policy dispute into a full-blown political spectacle, dominating headlines and cable news coverage. Trump's tirade rallied his base, energizing supporters who saw the tolls as another example of foreign governments taking advantage of the U.S. and putting mounting pressure on the White House to respond forcefully. Republican lawmakers wasted no time echoing Trump's calls for tough retaliation, holding press conferences, and demanding immediate action from the administration. The border tolls quickly became a headline issue, dominating front pages and sparking round-the-clock coverage on television and online news outlets. For Trump, the dispute offered a perfect platform to revive his signature "America First" message, drawing sharp contrasts with his political opponents and reigniting debates over trade, sovereignty, and national identity. What began as a Canadian domestic policy has now become a powerful weapon in U.S. domestic politics, fueling partisan battles and raising the stakes for both countries. With each new statement, the stakes and the rhetoric keep rising, leaving the future of cross-border relations hanging in the balance. The economic shock was immediate. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates the new tolls add $8 million in daily costs to cross-border trade. For industries like auto manufacturing, where parts cross the border repeatedly, these fees threaten the just-in-time models that keep factories running. Small businesses and independent truckers are hit hardest, facing costs they can't easily absorb or pass on. Canadian grocery chains warn of higher prices for U.S. produce, while American consumers will pay more for Canadian goods like lumber and maple syrup. The uncertainty is chilling new investment as companies rethink expansion plans amid fears of further escalation. The risk of a broader trade war looms, with both economies facing higher costs and lost competitiveness. What started as a toll is now a threat to the entire North American supply chain. The fallout is just beginning. In Canada, the tolls have sparked fierce political infighting. Trudeau's government defends the move as necessary, but opposition parties call it a reckless gamble with Canada's top trading partner. Provincial leaders, especially in Ontario, warn the tolls threaten key industries and demand a reversal. The rift between federal and provincial governments weakens Canada's negotiating hand. In Washington, the Biden administration is caught between defending U.S. interests and avoiding a trade war. They filed a formal protest and started a USMCA dispute process, but critics say their response is too soft. Republicans push for aggressive retaliation, while Democrats worry about harming consumers and violating trade agreements. The result? Partisan gridlock and a lack of unified strategy, emboldening Canada to hold firm. The political fallout is deepening on both sides of the border. For truckers, the new tolls are a direct hit to their bottom line. Hundreds of dollars per round trip, often out of pocket. These costs add up quickly, especially for those who make multiple crossings each week. Every toll receipt is a reminder that their margins are shrinking. And for many, it's becoming harder to make ends meet. Many are independent operators who can't easily pass on the cost, facing tough choices about which loads to take. Some are forced to turn down jobs that no longer make financial sense, while others spend hours searching for alternative routes that might save a few dollars, even if it means longer days on the road. Border communities are feeling the squeeze. Commuters, nurses, and families who cross daily now face steep new expenses. For those who rely on cross-border work or family ties, the tolls are more than just a financial burden. They're a daily obstacle that disrupts routines and relationships. Some are rethinking jobs or cutting back on visits, fraying the social fabric that once bound these regions together. Parents are reconsidering whether to keep their children in cross-border schools, and friends who once met weekly now see each other less often, eroding the sense of community. Trucking companies scramble to consolidate loads or seek toll-free routes, creating new bottlenecks and congestion at smaller crossings. Dispatchers are working overtime to reroute drivers, but the increased traffic is overwhelming infrastructure that was never designed for such heavy use. The emotional toll is real. What was once an open, friendly border now feels like a barrier. Drivers and families alike feel the weight of uncertainty and frustration as the ease of movement they once took for granted slips away. Resentment is growing on both sides. Americans feel targeted. Canadians fear economic blowback. Protests and heated exchanges are becoming more common as both communities struggle to adapt to the new reality. The policy has turned neighbors into adversaries, with ordinary people paying the price for a political standoff. Long-standing friendships and business partnerships are being tested, and the sense of unity that once defined these border towns is fading. The human cost is mounting. Every day more people are caught in the crossfire, their lives disrupted by decisions far beyond their control. The toll dispute has pushed US-Canada relations to a breaking point. What began as a funding measure has become a test of the world's most integrated economic partnership. The USMCA's promise of frictionless trade is under threat, with political rhetoric making compromise harder than ever. Dispute resolution is underway, but legal processes are slow, and the damage is mounting. A negotiated settlement is possible, but would require political will and a cooling of public tempers. If escalation continues, a tit-for-tat trade war could inflict lasting harm on both economies. This is about more than tolls. It's about the future of North American cooperation. The decisions made now will shape the continent for years to come.